Hi, everyone. Welcome to another 10 to 20 with Tanya. I'm Tanya, and today we're going to talk about being polite in English, specifically about being polite in American English. And the reason I say that specifically is that, of course, different countries have different cultures. So it's not just about the words you say, it's also about how you say it, what you say, when you say it, things like that. So I made a few notes so that I could be sure and um, think of or say the things that I wanted to say to you today, but I also want to answer your questions. So if you're listening live, you can put the questions in the comment box here. And if you're listening to this recording, I want to answer your questions too. So put your questions in the comments. So welcome, Salha. Thank you for saying hello. I see that we have a few more people joining us. So say hello, let me know where you're calling from or where you're listening from, and put your questions about being polite in the comments. So, also, what I'd like you to do is put anything you know about being polite. What are some of the words or phrases we use in English to be polite with other people? I know that most of you know about saying please and thank you and these kinds of things. And of course, this is very important. Another phrase that we use is excuse me. And I'm going to write this. Let me put this over here. Excuse me. I'm going to write this in the comments because this is a phrase that we use a lot. Now, I want you to be sure and stick with me to the end of this video because I'm going to share some of the more unusual ones here in just a minute. Welcome from Saudi Arabia and Kurdistan, Iraq. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, do you know what another phrase for excuse me is? We can say excuse me, but we have another way to say this, and some people consider it even more polite, or you could say more formal. Hi, Josie Naldo. Great to see you again. So, excuse me is one way that we say it. If we bump into someone, if we bump into them, we can say, excuse me. Or if we need to get their attention, for instance, in a restaurant, excuse me. Or if we need to say something and someone else is speaking, we need to interrupt them, which is not considered polite. But if you really need to do that, you could say, oh, excuse me, and then say what you needed to say. This is commonly taught to young children because their parents maybe are talking. Let's say they're at the park or they're at someone's house having a play date. The adults are talking a lot and they're never stopping, and the child needs to say something. It's okay for the child to say, excuse me, so they can say, Johnny fell down and he needs an adult. Okay, oh, and there's a very polite thing that Josie Naldo has just put in the comments when I said it was great to see him. He said, "It's my pleasure." Very great, very polite thing to say. It's my pleasure. Um, and Salah, I think you might have meant, um, excuse me, pardon me. Pardon me is the other phrase I was thinking of instead of excuse me. Now, a child might say, pardon me, but pardon me is quite a bit more formal. Not quite a bit. Let me take that back. Uh, pardon me is more formal. We might use that in a business setting or in a more formal setting, but we might teach our children to say that because it is a little more formal. So while we're thinking about that, um, what do you know about saying ma'am? Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, sir. What do you know about these phrases and how polite they are in the United States and when we might use them? So write what you know in the comments for me, and I will tell you that if you are in a restaurant, for example, and you need to get the attention of the waiter or waitress, it is more polite to say, "Excuse me, sir," or "Excuse me, ma'am," than to say, "Waiter." It's not considered as polite here. I know in some countries it is more polite, but and you can say that, of course, you will get their attention, but it's more polite to say, "Excuse me, sir," or "Excuse me, ma'am." But here's the but. If you're speaking to a woman and she seems to be about maybe 10 years younger than me, and you say, "Excuse me, ma'am," you might offend her. What I mean by that, she might not like that. And so is it polite or not polite? It is polite, but you have to be careful who you use that phrase with because women don't like to be called ma'am if they're younger, because ma'am is used to speak to someone my age or older. A woman who's an older woman, you can say, "Excuse me, ma'am." But I would be careful of that. Almost everyone is okay being called miss. So instead of ma'am, I'm going to type it here. You could say miss. There's a whole lot more to know about those words, but for the sake of being polite, I wanted to share that with you today. Josinaldo says it can be used to get information. Exactly right. Exactly right. I love that Salah is laughing. I laugh too. If somebody calls me ma'am, I'm totally okay with it, but other women in the United States may feel differently about that. Okay, if you do want to use the word waiter or waitress, at least say, "Pardon me, waiter, excuse me," so that you sound more polite. It also has to do with your tone of voice, right? If you say, "Waiter," that's way different than saying, "Waiter, waiter," because of the way you say it. It sounds more polite, right? Um, Another phrase that you can use that is very polite is, "I was wondering if." I was wondering if. This is a phrase we use a lot. I was wondering if, so in a restaurant, you could use this. I was wondering if you could bring me a glass of water. My glass is full, but if it wasn't, you could say, I was wondering if I could have more water. Um, that is very polite. Um, and we can use it in other situations. At work, we can say to someone, I was wondering if you could help me with this project. I was wondering if you have time to help me. Um, we can use a similar phrase. It's a little different. If by chance. And we can use them together. I was wondering if by chance you have time to help me. That's like super polite, like you're asking a huge favor of somebody, so you want to be super polite. Um, I was wondering if by chance you have extra paper, could I borrow a piece? This if by chance means I am not assuming that you have extra paper. I'm not assuming that you have extra time because in the United States, it is not considered polite to assume something about someone else. When we assume something, we think in advance that they have the paper, they have the time. This is not something we do. So we say, if by chance, or is there any chance? Is there any chance that you have extra time? Or is there any chance that you have extra paper? Is there any chance that you have a pen I could borrow? That would be something polite to say. You could also say, is there any way? And in this way, we mean, is there any way you could help me? I know you're very busy. Is there any way you could help me? Um, and then one other that I wanted to share with you, actually two more before we run out of time here, is could you please stop doing something? Could you please, could you please, and we can add on to that, could you please stop doing that, for example? and you use this in a question mark. If somebody is doing something annoying, like clicking their pen, they may not even be aware that they're clicking their pen, or maybe they're doing it on the desk like this, and it's making a noise that's annoying you in the meeting, for instance. You could say, "Oh, excuse me, could you stop doing that? Or is there any way you would stop doing that?" You're just saying, instead of saying, "That's annoying, stop," which of course we're not gonna say, you're being polite. But think about how you say it. So, of course, you're not gonna say, "Could you stop doing that?" But people do, and that tone is very, very impolite. So your tone of voice, how you say it, is just as important as what you say. All right. I have one last cultural thing I want to share with you, especially when you are writing to people online, people you don't know, people on YouTube, people on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you are writing to people, people that you really like their channel, you really like their page. In the United States, we don't say "I love you" to people we don't know, in writing especially. So, if you write to someone who has a page that you think is great and you write "I love you," heart, and nothing else, it's considered a little creepy. Let me explain that. Especially if you are a man saying this to a woman, but it can go in many directions. So, but this one is the most it's the one you most want to avoid. So, in the United States, we are affectionate people. We love to hug each other when we see each other, but some people do not. Sometimes friends will say, "Oh my gosh, I just love you," but some people do not. And so when we don't know someone, we will be more cautious about that, and we will not write to someone, "I just love you," or "I love you," when you mean, "I love your channel. I love what you're doing. I love how you help us. I love your page." So instead of saying, "I love you," say what you love. "I love the way you teach us. I love the way you present this material. I love your channel. I love your page." These are all great ways to express how much you appreciate someone. And I'd like to end by saying we all love to get appreciation, and you can show your appreciation in the way that I just shared, or you can say, thank you so much." And if you want to show even more appreciation, tell them what you're saying thankful for. Thank you, pardon me, tell them what you're saying thank you for. For instance, "Thank you so much for the way that you showed us how to do that. Thank you for all of the details you gave us on that topic. Thank you for sharing that phrase." Whatever it was, this is a way to show your gratitude even more. All right, Josinaldo says, "I love your tips." Thank you, Josinaldo. That's exactly how I would recommend saying that. I want to thank you all for being here with me today, whether you're listening live with me or if you listen to the recording. We love all of our followers. We love to have students that are here with us. Did you notice what I just said? And what I mean is, we love it that you take some of your time out of your busy day to not only listen, but to leave comments. It means a lot to us. So thank you, and I'll look forward to seeing you in another video very soon. Bye.